With the events of One Piece chapter 1014, we have to talk about Joyboy, what Joyboy represents, his purpose, his story. Based off of what Kaido said, it's time to revisit it because we have new information to talk about who exactly is Joyboy, what Joyboy means for the future, and how much the past has impacted the future. There's so many things swirling around in my head just based off of the chapter, but what I want us to focus on right now is subbing to the channel, right? If you're here for the first time, drop a like, sub to the channel. We're going to talk about Joyboy in depth. If you're anime only, this probably isn't for you because we will be discussing spoilers, and this is something you want to experience for the first time. So guys, buckle up and let's talk about Joyboy. So in chapter 1014, Kaido says to Luffy, so you're not Joyboy either. But the context of what he's saying, it doesn't really make any sense to us because there's still so many things we don't know about Joyboy. So then the question you're probably asking, okay, then what do we know? Well, the first time we even hear about Joyboy is chapter 628. When Nico Robin in Fishman Island, she found a poneglyph, and the poneglyph was not the typical poneglyph. This time it was a letter. And this letter is Joyboy apologizing to the people of Fishman Island because he couldn't accomplish whatever it was he set out to do. So because he couldn't accomplish what he set out to do, the people of Fishman Island, they believe that it's their right, the legend is to protect the Noah so that whomever comes along to replace Joyboy or fulfill this promise in Joyboy's stead, they can complete that task left behind by Joyboy, which does involve the Noah. That's why back then in Fishman Island, when Luffy's about to destroy the Noah, Neptune even apologized to Joyboy saying, hey, I'm sorry, we're not able to fulfill our promise. But their promise to Joyboy is to protect the Noah. And then that's obviously stopped by Shirahoshi commanding the Neptunians, the Sea Kings, to catch the ship. So then that saved the Noah because Luffy was about to destroy it. But who is this person, Joyboy? I think it's perfect as well, the name Joyboy, because it goes so well with the D clan and them always smiling, especially in the face of death. But then you wonder, right? Because it seems to be an alias, not an actual name of someone. I think somewhat descriptive of somebody that smiles all the time, cheerful, happy, and that's very representative of the D's, even Blackbeard, right? But Joyboy is somebody that existed during the 100-year void. Of course, that has to do with the ancient kingdom, the ancient history, and that goes back to one of the greatest mysteries in One Piece. What started all this? How did they know? And how is everything connected? The best way I can put this, right, is that history is somewhat repeating itself. I mentioned that before in one of my videos, and someone said, well, history more so has a rhyme to it, right? Where things that happened before more than likely will happen again. So in this instance, with Joyboy failing to accomplish his mission, he put things in place so that whomever would come after him, they would have the adequate resources and tools to accomplish what he couldn't. So with his failure, he's leaving things behind to make sure that the person who comes behind him, they succeed. And then with history having a rhyme to it, Roger, maybe somewhat unintentionally, does the same thing because we know at Roger's execution. Unless this person who asked Roger where his treasure was a plant by Roger or someone, he asked Roger where his treasure was. He said he left it at that place in one piece. So when you think of it, Roger in a way did the same thing that Joyboy did, where for example in Sky Island, he left messages and things behind to make the journey a bit easier, but also you want it to be the right person. That's why the conversation with Whitebeard and Roger is so important, because we know for a fact Whitebeard said Blackbeard is not the person Roger is waiting for, meaning whatever the One Piece is, Blackbeard is not the appropriate one to inherit that will. Personally, I think that goes back to Blackbeard's methods and how the journey is important, because we know for Laugh Tale, Roger said that Joyboy, whatever he left behind, at least insinuated to be a tale full of laughs. And so for someone like Blackbeard, who solely seems to be about the mission rather than the journey, how could he enjoy something like what Joyboy left behind, which more than likely is going to be a great story, somewhat journaling everything he's gone through, even though he failed? Ultimately, Oden had his logbook. Joyboy probably has the same thing, documenting the things he went through, but also telling you of the Void Century and things you need to accomplish what needs to be done. Now, when you factor into Kozuki and the land of Wano being closed off in the past, Oden, whatever he learned, he found out that Wano needs to be open again. So when you think of this history and the puzzle pieces that had to fall in place, Oden was intent on leaving Wano, opening Wano because Wano was too cramped. Because of Oden's intent, meaning Whitebeard, meaning Roger, he learned all that about the history. So now coming back to Wano, he's like, we have to open the borders, because he said we have to open the borders for when Joyboy arrives. But that's also connected to Roger, because remember Rayleigh, when we talked to him in Sabaody Archipelago, he said they were too early. What could that mean? Well, going back to Fishman Island, when Roger got to Fishman Island, Madame Shirley, she talked about a mermaid that will be born soon that can control the Neptunians. So when you think about Rayleigh saying that they were too early, obviously they were too early because Princess Shirahoshi, she is necessary to accomplish whatever it is Joyboy needed to do. Something interesting as well that Neptune said, because they talk about the power that Shirahoshi would wield, which is controlling the Neptunians that could destroy the world. And then Roger says, so you're saying your daughter is going to be a weapon that will destroy the world one day? And then Neptune says, well, every power depends on how you use it. Let's say, for instance, Joyboy's goal was to accomplish his mission, which I think, this is my personal theory, there was someone back then in the Void Century from the Ancient Kingdom that had similar powers to Madame Shirley, and they predicted the demise of the Ancient Kingdom. So that's why, with the help of the Kazuki clan, they made the poneglyphs, scattered everything, closed off Wano to protect these secrets, and eventually, through prophecy as well, predicted when someone would come along that would inherit the will of Joyboy that could actually change the world and fulfill the things that were necessary to make the world one again. So for Joyboy's mission, I think something that could have happened is the powers fell into the wrong hands. For instance, the ancient weapons, Uranus, Pluton, and Poseidon, they fell into the wrong hands and it was used the wrong way, and therefore through these powers, the ancient kingdom was wiped out. So Joyboy documenting the entire history, somewhat like I mentioned this before, Magi, where Magi had an entire flashback arc, seemingly telling you what happened in the past to lead to the events of the future. I think that's going to happen because you have to document what got us here and how Joyboy was instrumental in this. Somebody we can't leave out of this as well is Toki, because Toki is from that time and she left that time to go forward, and then she said it herself. She ended up being where she needed to be. So Toki, who seemed to be running away from her duties back then, ended up where she was needed, because without her powers, 20 years before Luffy arriving to Wano, everything would have stopped. So then, somewhat the theme of this video, history repeating itself or history having a rhyme to it, things somewhat fall in place, but that scares people because then people think of destiny, inherited will, well, not more so inherited will, but things already predetermined to happen. And for some people, it would take away from Luffy's journey because a lot of things Luffy has gone through, people would more so attribute that to destiny as opposed to Luffy being a hard worker and being free-willed. And then it goes against the core theme of One Piece, which is freedom. If something is destined to happen and a lot of your actions has been predetermined by prophecy. But then you ask the question, but then prophecy doesn't really determine free will. That's more so reincarnation. If Luffy's a reincarnation of Joyboy, that would be problematic. I see no issue with Luffy inheriting the will of Joyboy. Now, there's a question as to who Joyboy is, because I think it's just an alias, someone that's going to accomplish these things as opposed to a reincarnation. So then we can go back to the Neptunians, and when they were talking underwater about the sovereigns being born, obviously one of them is Shirahoshi, right? Now, who's the other sovereign? How things have been lining up, it seems to be Luffy. Like, he's the most obvious choice. Now, Kaido, he throws a wrinkle into it because now he knows a lot more than we thought, and he says Luffy isn't Joyboy either. Again, with the context of what he's saying, what does that even mean? So Kaido, do you know the history of the world? Do you know what Joyboy was intending to do? Is that why you were going after the One Piece, to rule the world? Kaido, what do you know, and why does Luffy's defeat to your hands means that he's not Joyboy? Well, in this situation, obviously, because he can't open up the borders of Wano, that person that I just defeated could never be Joyboy. The person that will defeat me more than likely is Joyboy because I hold the keys to Wano. Did Kaido specifically target Wano because he knows how important Wano is to the ancient history? Again, these things lead to so many different questions because Kaido knows so much. Another thing, I'd mentioned it in the review, Kaido and Caribou. Caribou heard everything from Neptune and Robin. With Kaido knowing about Joyboy, it then begs the question, if he ever talks to Caribou and Caribou links things together, make it make sense for Kaido. He could start thinking that he himself is Joyboy. Where it's like, okay, maybe some of these things are for me to accomplish. I don't know, but it's all interesting. I think it was important to touch on exactly what we were working with in regards to Joyboy. We also can't forget the elephant in the room, or the hat in the chamber with Imu-sama. And some people feel like that was Joyboy's hat. So more than likely Joyboy was either a giant or some great big creature, because you know, One Piece characters, some of them are huge and they're not giants. So we have to wait and see. There's a lot more that we have to learn, but this story and how things are somewhat falling into place, and it's been somewhat, you know, it's fantastic. It's incredible. And I really can't wait to learn more. But guys, give me your thoughts. How do you feel about all this? Momonosuke is important here as well, because Momonosuke, you know, he could be a sovereign that's, you know, that they needed to be born, but based on the time he was already born when they said that. Momonosuke more than likely is trending to be an ancient weapon, but obviously for the world to go back to the way it was, the whole point of the prophecy is to utilize all these different things, all these different ancient weapons. Shirahoshi, possibly Momonosuke, also Pluton. That's why Frankie's so important. Robin, everyone on the Straw Hat crew seems to be very important towards the end game of the story, which is going to be fantastic. But guys, give me thoughts. How do you feel about all this? Make sure to like the video if you did. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Follow me on Twitter at BragoDAce. Follow me on Instagram at BragoD.Ace. Thank you to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Guys, like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Okay, I start doubting me, I felt lost. I rewrite it.